Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Alex Rankin, and today we're shifting our focus to the future of stormwater management with David Rubenstein, CEO of Opti. Opti is pioneering the use of intelligent, real-time control systems to manage stormwater infrastructure, helping cities and organisations meet complex environmental mandates while improving water quality and resilience. David has a deep background in scaling technology solutions within the public sector, and we'll be discussing the unique challenges of selling innovative data-driven systems to government bodies, how to achieve product market fit in a highly conservative industry like water management, and the role of smart systems in creating a more sustainable future. So get ready for a focused conversation on technology, policy, and environmental impact. David, thank you again for joining us today and welcome. Before we dive into some more technical questions, I'd just love to hear a bit more about yourself and your journey and whether there's been a particularly pivotal moment in your journey that's inspired you to join Opti and get involved in wastewater management or stormwater management.
Thank you, Alex, and really appreciate the opportunity to engage with you today. And I think you framed things really well on the front end. You know, what the challenges are around stormwater management and the challenges of just bringing technology into a conservative industry that needs to be conservative for all the right reasons. As for myself, it's been quite a journey in the world of technology. I co-founded my first company in 1985 and haven't looked back since. I've had 14 stops along the way. The common thread has been technology innovation and disruption. Typically, I go into venture-backed companies or PE-backed companies, work with the founders to scale them up. And it's been a very rewarding career. I think the most rewarding part for me is how I've been able to help people realize their dreams and achieve success. And that's sort of my way of paying it forward in this world. Opti came along at a very unique time for me. I made a decision around 2010, 2012. I really wanted to get into some technology-based endeavors that had more of a social impact. But the interesting thing is I actually went into advertising technology at that point in time. And the strategic study for a company, and they asked me if I could implement it. Which I said, of course, anything I put on paper, I'm going to make sure I know I can deliver on. But I learned about what was going on in ad tech, which made me a lot more relevant. And I understood the internet a lot better, but it was not extremely fulfilling for me because obviously there's not a big social mission behind it. Be able to say, well, we make the internet free for you because of advertising. Yeah, that's okay. That's like broadcast TV. Terrific culture, great people to work with. That was inspiring, highly innovative, but ad tech also commoditizes as quickly as you innovate. It's a real tough conundrum. So, I got an opportunity where I went into an independent home health agency in Massachusetts where we provide universal health for those who are not covered. That was very fulfilling. And we replatformed the company so that nurses who were out on the road had the flexibility to just use a tablet, fill out their paperwork, didn't have to go to offices anymore. We were able to really squash down the cost structure. And that's a vital agency for the state of Massachusetts, serving over 2,000 citizens who were quite needy. But I also missed the pace of being in the technology sector. And I had gotten a call from a recruiter on a retained search where they were looking for a president and COO for Opti, as well as to be the CEO in waiting. And I had known about Opti a few years earlier, just through my network and knowing what's going on in the startup scene in Boston. And I was really interested in it because I really enjoy being out on the water, kayaking, hiking wetlands, being at the beaches and whatnot, coastlines 15 minutes from my home. So I took a real hard look at it and said, wow, this to me looks like it could be a game changer. We can bring technology into methods that are really based on methods that the Romans put together on how to move water around. So I felt like I found one of the last frontiers of digital disruption, and that has been the case. So I joined in January of 2018. The board asked me to take about 6 months to really get to know the industry, understand our platform and whatnot. And I came back and said, I think we don't have the right business model. We're operating like an engineering firm with software, and it's blocking us from a lot of the major accounts in the marketplace. The message I would hear from engineering firms, what we call AEC firms, was we had a great product, but we were selling directly to their end account. There was channel conflict going on. The platform felt like it was a black box to users. And so I brought a plan to the board that said, look, we have to turn ourselves into a pure software company. We absolutely need to have that engineering expertise because how else do you codify these methods into software? But we need to have this platform open that any engineering firm can implement it. and we can support them in that. So they blessed the plan. I became the CEO in February of 2019, and we worked on the pivot until, well, COVID hit. So that obviously made things a lot more difficult. But we not only pivoted the business model, we had to pivot the culture. Because the first thing people said to me was, I'm a water resource engineer. If we're going to be a software company, I'm not valuable anymore.
Right.
And I said, no, it's quite the opposite. You're even more valuable because your intellect is what's going to help create a great software product. And now we had some changes in staff. We found that environmental engineers are very passionate about what we do because of the metrics and the analysis that they can do. Traditional water resource engineers really wanted to go do more custom design work. So we had a little bit of a staff turnover from that whole situation, but we became a real tiger tough team through this pivot, and we've been able to rebuild. We were acquired by the Ali Axis Group in November of 2022. They're headquartered out of Brussels. They're one of the top pipe manufacturers in the world, and they were looking at adopting a digital strategy.
Okay.
So that's where we are today.
Fantastic. And that's really interesting. You've come on a very varied journey there. Can you give us a bit more of an explanation about what Opti actually does and how the process works?
Certainly. So most stormwater facilities, and I'm going to talk about stormwater ponds. Okay. You can also have underground detention for man-made assets, but let's talk about ponds because the ponds today operate like our bathtub, right? Your bathtub has this outflow hole at the top. If the water gets too high, it hits the outflow, and that way you don't flood your bathroom. The way stormwater ponds work, and you see them next to highways and large parking lots, any kind of paved over impervious surfaces. And the idea is to get the water to flow into the pond. And while the water sits in the pond, dirt molecules and pollutants connect. Gravity takes them to the bottom of the pond, and Mother Nature does her thing, munching it up. What we do is we add technology to this setup. So back to the outflow hole, we put an automated valve on that outflow hole. We could sink a pipe to the bottom, which gives us access to the full capacity of the pond. And we also are monitoring the weather forecast to understand when to turn that valve.
Right.
So you've got technology out at that site. We typically run on solar power. So we have an actuator that acts as the engine to turn that valve. And then it communicates over to the cellular networks back up to the Opti cloud. Opti cloud knows the configuration of the pond. How large is it? What are the real-time conditions with the pond? So how much water is in the pond? How long has it been there? Are we measuring for any pollutants? And we're monitoring the weather forecast. Now, the weather forecast will tell us that a storm's approaching, and we can get a 48-hour advance notice. So once we see that a storm's coming, we'll begin to calculate how much water is going to flow into this pond. Is there enough capacity, or do we need to draw it down before the storm? And by drawing it down before the storm, it's like adding another 60% capacity. If we go back to the passive method, nothing would be pulling that water out. When we pull it out before the storm, it's cleaner because it's been resident in the pond. It might be flowing down to wetlands. Also control how fast that water comes out so we don't erode any food source in the wetlands, streams and all that. If it's going to a wastewater treatment plant, it's going to the wastewater treatment plant before the storm, so the plant has capacity to process it. Right? The issue, particularly here in the Northeast US, we have a problem with combined sewer overflows. And what that means, CSOs, what that means is when there's a storm and these passive methods are working, the wastewater treatment plant gets overwhelmed and it pushes sewerage right out into nature's waterways. So by being able to process the water ahead of time, we create more capacity during the storm and we keep it out of the wastewater treatment plants, thereby reducing combined sewer overflows. So as an example, we have a setup in the city of Albany, New York, the capital of the state of New York. We're reducing about 200 million gallons of CSO a year for them by using
huge.
these methods, which we call CMAC, continuous monitoring and adaptive control.
And what's your process of working with government or city council clients to get them to agree to put these in place?
Number one, we need to have regulatory approval. Right now, we do have regulatory approvals in some of the, I'll say, most advanced environmental states like Maryland, Washington State, and they get reciprocity. That gets us reciprocity into other states, but we still may have to go through that. So that's a hurdle we need to get through. Then, yes, we'll work with municipalities. We work with sewer authorities. There are some stormwater utilities. It's highly fragmented here in the States. We have over 40,000 water utilities. So you have that. We also do a lot of work in the private sector because in the private sector, we can take that pond and we can shrink it by about 50%.
Some of your case studies as well, where you're working with actual rooftops on buildings as well to try and reduce the amount of space they need to gather rainwater and
Yeah.
to then recycle some of that for irrigation on buildings, which is
Now,
quite a
those are some of my favorite stories. We have a apartment developer we work with in New York City. He has a couple of comments to say. One is, with Opti, my buildings don't flood any longer. Without Opti, he still meets the requirements by the city of New York, but his buildings would still flood. So the technology really helps. Now, also, we're capturing that water and we're pumping it up to the rooftop, where there's a rooftop farm that handles produce for 4,000 people. So we have a little motto: stormwater is an asset. Right? Let's cure it, let's filter it, let's use it for property irrigation rather than tapping into the municipal water supply. Done with a beautiful office building here right outside of Boston. Saved them about $2 million in their build out. So they could put in smaller underground detention blocks, which saved them about $800,000. Capturing the water, we're moving it over to an irrigation system where it's properly filtered. That's saving them about $50,000 a year in operating expenses on the municipal water bill. And they are now set up for more expansion on that parcel, because we have a more advanced offering we call Smart Watershed Network Management, where we can actually network these assets together and control the flow of the total across the watershed, not just the single site.
yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack there, I think, for me. Uh, I was interested in uh, that connected side of things, like in Australia. Trying to think of examples where would you be able to use this technology, for example, to manage whole downstream irrigation systems, for like releasing water from weirs and even small dams to manage, say, environmental flows out to wetlands as well as
Yes.
out to cropping areas, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can think of this as process control technology for water, but we're taking into consideration real time conditions by reading the sensors. So back to like the example of, excuse me, Albany, New York. We're reading sensors at the wastewater treatment plant to understand how much capacity do they have. And then upstream, we're controlling currently 8 different facilities that all convey into the same sewer interceptor. So, it's like orchestrating traffic. It's almost air traffic control for water,
Yeah.
because we could release water from all 7 before a storm and overwhelm the wastewater treatment plant. Pretty embarrassing, and big fines from EPA.
So do you have some sort of overarching policy things that you have to agree with each of those different parties within the system about what decisions you make at what point and what
Yes.
conditions you operate within?
Yeah. So, regulatory can be different by state, by county, by municipality. For us, the US has 50 states, but it's almost like 50 countries from a regulatory perspective. So, as an example, there can be a regulation around your peak flow management. And when do you handle it? How much do you handle it? What pace is it allowed? We can configure all of those things into the system. And our next generation products coming out next year, I like to call it the Stormwater Engineers Workbench. It's a control command center where the stormwater engineers can allow everything to flow automatically or take manual control. Sometimes they treat it like it's a video game. They like to see if they can beat the system, but it's where they can actually tune all of these configuration parameters and optimize for different situations.
Okay. So the most important part of the tech is obviously the software side of things. Is that right? It's the brain behind the whole system.
And
And so bringing this type of really high-tech data-driven solution, as we talked earlier, to a very fragmented sector of water management and traditionally, as we discussed earlier, very highly conservative. What
yes.
what is the single biggest barrier that you've come across or that you're coming across with rolling this type of system out? Is it a regulatory one, a procurement one, cultural and training?
Well, I'm gonna capture this in an envelope from. Are you familiar with Crossing the Chasm from
Yeah.
Jeffrey Moore? Okay, I'm a big believer in it. I've been practicing it since the book got published in the mid '90s. So we actually ran a workshop with a customer where we went through the principles of Crossing the Chasm. which is late adopters are very practical buyers. They need to see where has it been done in my neighborhood by X number of people. And it's not just the software, it's the people, it's the process, and the technology. So we take a change management approach to how we help our customers get comfortable and get up to speed. And now we're starting to study our repeat buyers and understand what are the factors that got them comfortable to scale up. There's a couple of issues in this industry when it comes to digital technology. And it's almost like being in the accounting industry back in the 90s, which is where I started my career, right? Where there wasn't any financial software packages except ones written by Arthur Andersen and Price Waterhouse and EY, right? We have that kind of confusion, although it's starting to settle out now in the AEC industry. Should they buy software? Should they build software? And then you have the independent innovators, which is, I don't believe that service companies should be building software packages and selling them. We want to look for innovators like Opti and others and partner with them. So the engineering firms have strong influence on what happens, and we've been able to build out a partner program and educate our engineering partners and assist them on how to implement Opti. And we have a life cycle methodology that enables all of that. So when you go back to crossing the chasm and you look at the people issues, the process issues, and the tech adoption, it's where we really, again, take that change management approach to get people comfortable. So we like to hold your hand for the first 3 months of production, ensure that everything operates smoothly. Sometimes you have a hiccup with hardware. Sometimes a configuration setting needs to be reset, and we can optimize it even further. And then after that, we just monitor your performance, but we don't interfere with you unless you invite us in.
Okay. And do you have a discussion with people about the cost of not doing this type of approach, the cost of inaction? Is that a concept that resonates with your clients?
I'd say the private sector jumps at it more quickly because they are very economic ROI driven. We've just had a couple of Fortune 500 companies standardize on us for their properties. So, we all know data centers are really hot right now. So, yeah, there's the cost of inaction. On the public side, it's slower in that kind of an understanding. It's not always ROI driven, but we save a ton of taxpayer money. So, for instance, you can build a new stormwater pond for, let's say, $1 million, or if you retrofit Opti on 2 existing stormwater ponds, you get that same capacity for about 40% of the cost. Where people get hung up in the public sector is we're a SaaS subscription. We get a lot of feedback about, well, you're doing that because you can just hold us captive and really raise our prices hard on us. And no, that's not why we do it. You get a better product with a SaaS. Right? You find one defect in a SaaS product and it's fixed for all your customers, right? It's all of those traditional things. So there's a bit of an education that has to go on around that. And concerned about price increases, we can put a limit on that in the contract. I mean, basically, we want to be able to cover inflation. Software engineers are not inexpensive. They're quite valuable, and we want to compensate properly. So we get through those objections.
Yep. And do you also have the opportunity to gather data about environmental benefits? Like you mentioned, reducing the CSO overflows into environmental wetlands or other areas?
Yeah, so we can start a project with monitoring just to take a look at what are the flows and try to pinpoint where in the watershed would the right implementations make sense. You don't need to do a massive capital improvement plan with Opti. You can be very agile, go right into the right places. So we can then we provide real-time data. A lot of installations, particularly in the passive world, they just do modeling. There's no actual results going on. It's like looking at a corporate forecast. I never saw a forecast I didn't like. We bring data when we're making instant actionable insights. This isn't industry overuses the term smart so much. And to me, monitoring's not smart. It's important, but there's no real-time action taking place. And that's what that RT is in smart. So we take that information and we make real-time instant decisions automatically to turn valves, to slow down stream energy, right? To understand, hold it back. It needs to be in residence longer in order to get cleaner. And then we can produce the performance data. So when you go to our website, you look at all these case studies, they're based on actual results and they are approved by the customers. So we know that it's all valid.
And what have you learned, I guess, about what data resonates with people? You're producing presumably quite a large complex set of different data sources. I guess the software is designed to spit out different reports that are designed for different clients and for different
Yeah,
purposes.
there are different use cases. So we have different use cases. Traditionally, a stormwater asset is single purpose based. So they call it a BMP, a best management practice. It has one single objective. We can do multi objective. So we could be actually set up to do flood control so that we're holding water back so that the neighborhood doesn't flood. But then we can also route it to irrigation systems. We can slow it down to prevent erosion issues. So we call it the multi-purpose BMP. We can do that. The data just is so rich in insights, and we are finishing off the development of an entirely new reporting system on some pretty slick open source BI platform. And there are markets that are now requiring real time actual results on stormwater BMP performance. And so we're going to be ready to be able to provide that.
Okay. And so you started off with stormwater being the primary role, but it sounds like it's got a huge amount of application across lots of different sectors. I can imagine some of the big irrigators and floodwater management being a massive issue here in Australia, where something similar would be incredibly useful. How are you going with getting it taken up for those sorts of broader purposes?
So we're actually starting to work with an Australian company, great group of folks from Rubicon who
Okay.
make gates for irrigation canals,
Yep.
and they've been encountering stormwater demand. So we are now taking a look at how do we interface with the Rubicon gates so that they can be utilized and utilize our algorithms for those gates in stormwater situations. So we're really excited to get going with those folks. There's a whole variety of hardware out there that we can interface with, whether it's sensors, valves, irrigation gates, slide gates, knife gates. So we have a test lab here in Boston where we'll actually run that hardware through a demonstration. We then want to test it in freezing environments, which is pretty easy because right now it's minus 11 degrees Celsius at my home in extreme weather environments, hurricane prone environments like the Southeast US. So we really put it through its paces. And I think, we can see scaling up from a couple of perspectives. One is actually doing the sewer sheds or the watersheds like we do in Albany, we do in Kansas City, Missouri. Well, we have some activity in St. Louis. Or it's in the private sector where a firm just says, we're going to standardize on you for our various parcels to help us not only save the land, but save water, right? So there's a group called the CEO Water Mandate. It's about 200 companies, and they're all looking for ways to replenish water back into the earth. Microsoft has a massive program, Amazon, IKEA. I mean, the list goes on. So, like working with those folks because I call them conscientious capitalists, right? They see that the climate could be an economic threat. They want to do the right thing for their communities. And we see a lot of water stress coming, particularly with data centers. Okay, let's treat stormwater as an asset and clean it and use it for cooling.
I like that concept. I haven't heard it discussed that way before. We always it's sort of treated as a nuisance thing that we just have to get rid of as quickly as possible,
Yeah,
rather than actually using it as a valuable resource.
so true.
Apart from revenue, David, what's the key metrics that you use to measure Opti success?
So I really like the balanced scorecard. And so that has four quadrants to it. Obviously, the financial side and looking at our operating margins and revenues. But from the customer side, we actually, from a go to market perspective, we look at three different cohorts. One is customers, obviously, but also the engineering firms we're working with. So that's cohort number two. We like to work with the local engineers. They know the hydrology the best. They understand how to model. You can model and simulate with Opti, so you understand what's going on there. And then our third cohort are what we call the influencers. So it's the NGOs. We do a lot of work and promotion with the Nature Conservancy. We work with different river keeper groups. We work with river association groups and other nonprofits that are just helping to push the environmental agenda. So that's the customer segment. Processes is the third piece in the balance scorecard. So there's always a few processes that we want to firm up and get better at. Last year, the big theme was this watershed agile methodology. So it's our life cycle.
Yep.
This year, it's looking at embedding some AI into some of our go to market processes. And then And the fourth quadrant is organizational learning and growth. So in the past, we have had all company reads. We've read Crossing the Chasm. We read Winning the Psychology of Success, The Four Agreements, one of my favorite. And this year, we're running a cultural program. So, a lot of companies have values. We have values, but it's really the behaviors that create your culture and creates that fuel of energy. So I author this, announce a cultural ritual a month. And then every week I send out a little newsletter on what our insights are. So this past month is feedback as a gift, is it. Now it's not just the receiver treating it as a gift, but you who are giving the gift, make sure you wrap it properly. Somebody that's wrapped in newspaper, right? That's no fun. The fun is opening the gift. So, we really get into some of those issues, and it's been a great journey.
Fantastic. And you mentioned the AI word there. Can you expand on that a bit more and whether you're looking at AI more broadly in some of your other software developments, hardware?
I'll share with you David's edginess on the AI hype. Since I've been doing this since 1982, and I learned on mainframes, I've been through 7 technology transformations. They all have an S curve for change, right? This S curve on AI is almost a vertical line. It's moving so fast. But we are not out promoting to people, hey, you should trust us because we use AI. In fact, I've had some customers come back to me and say, Dave, what's refreshing about you guys? You don't just say, well, we use AI, therefore it works and you should trust us. Because you've been doing this for over 10 years. Well, yeah, a lot of what people are saying is AI is what we've been doing for 10 years. Right. Now, we work closely with Microsoft, and they've helped us model some things that we would like to be able to do with AI around watershed scale modeling and whatnot. So, our next AI endeavors are more towards the large scale up watershed type modeling. Also, the networking software itself is something that we'll be taking a look at. We're involved in a massive undertaking with the Nature Conservancy and Arup Engineering down in Florida called the Indian River Lagoon. So IRL, 56 miles long, it's 10 to 15 miles wide. It's the largest biodiverse estuary in the United States. Part of our team is Amazon Web Services and NVIDIA. All this information is available on the Nature Conservancy's website. It's really exciting. So we started this about a year ago, and they have great digital skills, terrific digital modelers. They're working to help develop this whole networking model for the smart watershed, and we're looking at how do we create this as an open source tool so that we can really energize the entire world around smart stormwater management, watershed management. So we're looking at doing implementations in a very small area of that 156 miles next year, and we'll be measuring how well is the seagrass coming back. Are we seeing more aquatic life in this particular area because we're able to eliminate a lot of nutrient flow into that diverse estuary. So yeah, a lot of AI coming soon.
And in that context, what would be the AI be doing? Is it part of the monitoring side of things, or just bringing lots together bringing lots of different data sets together and making sense of them and trying
Well,
to tell
and
a story?
also, so you can imagine in an estuary so large as this, we could have 500 control points, right? So it's really looking at how to coordinate the release of water or the holdback of water into this estuary across all of those control points.
Mm.
And we can then take this model and bring it to other large scale estuaries around the country or bring it into a municipal environment. Taking a look at some places in Maryland, like a Prince George's County that has over 700 stormwater basins and a
Mhm.
lot of sub-watersheds. So how do you coordinate across all of that? And that's a big AI undertaking. Yeah. And then I'll also add that on the software development side, we are using AI tools just to help push along software development.
So, would you say that's one of the biggest shifts that you anticipate happening in like how cities and municipalities manage their water infrastructure in the future is moving down that sort of interconnected watershed management side of things, or
Well, water knows no boundaries. So I think it's probably the smartest, most effective way, particularly to handle the flooding that we see going on in urban environments. It takes a big coordination effort. And I think that there's a lot of latent capacity out there, whether it's within the sewer system pipes itself, where there are other companies addressing it that way, or being able to network together a lot of different underground detention systems, which is something that we're looking at with Oldcastle and their underground detention. We developed a joint offering there called Smart Capture, where we can utilize these underground assets. And similar to some of the examples I gave you around the apartment buildings in New York, the office buildings in
Yep.
Boston, but think about all the underground detention that's already there for a municipality. Let's get after that capacity. Get rid of this urban flooding that happens when you get a quarter of an inch or a half an inch of rain.
So, if you were to wave a magic wand and fix the biggest bottleneck in terms of your vision for Opti and the future of stormwater management, what would it be?
There. For me personally, as a CEO, I just think being able to work with firms that can help through these change management issues and getting people to adopt. I still get objections about us being a SaaS platform and people telling me it's not secure. And I'll ask, well, where's your data center? And they give me the address. It's not a matter of where the software is hosted. It's a security mindset. The fact that you gave me the address to your data center tells me you're not secure. We're in government secure data centers that Microsoft doesn't even publish the addresses. So there's an education effort to get out of this late adopter and become more mainstream adopters of technology. It's going to save a lot of money. It saves time, right? And it's a lot more resilient and adaptable. On top of it, we get real time results. We get real data. We know where in a world that requires continuous improvement, we know where to go and take care of that. Our citizens deserve this, and we need to save taxpayer dollars. I think every government needs to do it. Well, I'm a big believer that if you don't have enough market share in your home market, what are you doing running around the globe? It's always the
Right.
entrepreneur's dilemma.
Yeah.
And we do get inquiry from around the globe. Absolutely do. We've got more work to do here in the US. We are doing some things to our platform to have it ready to go international. Obviously, how we communicate with cellular networks, that's going to have to change. There may be different regulatory requirements. There's obviously language and measurement requirements. For instance, there are provinces in Canada where if your screen doesn't have French, you can't sell the software there. Those are things that we would need to look at jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
Yeah. David, I really appreciate the time you've taken today to talk me through your insights and thinking about stormwater management in such a different way as an asset, a really valuable asset that we need to be actually harvesting and using properly, and what your technology has been able to do in terms of actually controlling flows and saving lots of water and money. I think it's incredibly insightful and inspiring and brings a lot of hope to where we might be able to go in the future with water management, which is an incredibly precious resource.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and hopefully the word gets out there further around the globe. We can tackle these issues. We have the mindset and we have the brains across the globe. So let's just all come together and focus on helping Mother Nature take good care of us. Thank you for helping us.
Thank you again.